So in this video, we're going to be looking at my brand new SendTh.at app, which is cross-platform. It's available on iOS, Android, and the web at SendTh.at. It's SendTh.at. Links are all down in the description. And basically what this app does is it lets you send things. So you type something in, it sends it, it gives you a code, and then you can come in on any other SendTh.at app, click receive that code, and then it gives you back the text that you entered. So it's a great way for sharing links and text across all of your devices. In this video, I'm going to be continuing my series where I'm showing you exactly how I made this app. And in this video, we're going to be blocking the app inside of Thunkable. So if you want to see where we have been, basically what we've done so far is created a bunch of images inside of Canva that we're using all throughout the app. And then we also went through and I talked about how I designed each of these screens and went through and built out some of these with you. And in this video, we're actually talking about blocking out the app, which is Thunkable terms for coding. So we're putting all the code inside of this blocks screen. And so today, basically, I'm breaking this video up into 4 pieces. This is kind of the process we're going through, but right now I want to bring your attention to these 4 right here. So we're going to go through the page navigation for the SendTh.at app, generating a random number so we can create that one-time passcode. We'll go through saving our data through cloud variables and then retrieving that data through cloud variables. So let's jump straight into it. So the first piece was page navigation. So we can do that pretty easily. We want to navigate to a new portion of the screen. And when do we want to do this? Well, on the welcome screen, there are 2 buttons here. If we look at the design tab, I actually have 2 buttons, one at the top and one on the bottom. So a really easy way, since I want to go to the next screen when either button is pressed, is to come to any component and grab the when any button is clicked. I want to navigate to the home screen. And so what that will give us is, we can live test that. What that will give us is whenever we click on the screen, we'll go to the next screen there. And so now we're on the home screen, and we want to do things whenever we either hit this send button or when we hit the receive button. So when we do something, that's an event. So the event block for when we hit the send button, we want to navigate. So we'll come to control, navigate to the send item screen. And then I could right click on this, duplicate, and then change this to when receive button is clicked. I want to navigate to the receive code screen. All right, so let's test out and we'll do the send path. So we click to start, then we click our send button. That brings us to the send item screen. And so now we're on here, whenever we click this send button, we want to go to the send code screen because that gives us the code we need to enter in the other app. And so when it looks like I call this save button, when the save button is clicked, we want to navigate to the send code screen. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the receive code. We want to navigate somewhere, and then the receive button is being pressed. I want to navigate to the received item screen. So let's check out those paths. So we have click to start, send, and then I can send. That brings me to this screen. And it looks like we need to add in our back buttons. So we can do that now as well. So I'll go, and on 4 of the screens we have back buttons, and all of the back buttons go back to the home page. So I'll say back button, navigate to home on this page. On this one, same thing. We'll navigate from the back button. We'll navigate to home. On this one, we'll click back and navigate to home. And then one more time, we have one more back button. We will do this and then navigate to home. All right, cool. So let's check that receive path. I can click here, click receive. Now I can click my back button up here. That brings me back home. I can receive again and go back and then send, back, and then send back. Awesome. So now I have all of the buttons and all of the navigation hooked up. So that checks off the first one. And so the next thing we want to do to create this app is we want to generate a random number whenever whenever a person wants to save text or send something. So we're wanting to generate a random code for them. And so this code is going to live on our send item screen here. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So the first thing I created for this was a function. And we're going to create a function that returns something. And what I called this function is get random number. And we will remove statements, and all this function does is it's going to return a random number between 0 and 9. So I can come to my math blocks and grab random integer, and then I'll change this for random 0 to random 9. So random integer from 0 to 9. So every time I call this function, it's going to give me a number between 0 and 9. So when do I want to generate this random code? Well, I want to do that in this. So before we go to the send code screen, before we move over there, I want to generate this random number. And since I'm sending something from this screen to this screen, I need to store that value somewhere. And so I'm going to store that in what we call a variable. And this is going to be an app level variable, meaning it doesn't need to be stored long term. It can just live in this app. And so I'm going to call this variable code, because it's going to be the code that we're going to use. And so when save button is clicked, I want to set this code to something. And the code that we're using, and the code that I decided to use, was a string of 6 random numbers. So since I'm connecting things, and it's going to be a string, or another word for string is text, I'm going to come to text and grab this join block, and I'm going to be joining 6 numbers. So I'll grab in 6 items here. Let me get rid of this default. And then what am I going to join? Well, I come to my functions, and I'm going to get a random number. And I'm just going to do that 6 times. So now we have a random code that we're going to use to transfer our text inside of the app. That's generating the random number. So let me go ahead and show you how it'll look. We'll go over to the next screen. And so once we're on the send code, we want to display that code whenever the screen starts. So I'll come to the send code bucket here, and we'll say whenever the screen starts, I want to show the value that is in code on the screen. And let's see which one of these is my label. Yeah, so I'll call my label, here is your code. And so we're going to set the text of here is your code to this code here. And so now, if I go to click to start, I come to send, and then I sends me to the other screen, and it generates that code and displays it. And so I can do that again. And it's going to give me another brand new code. Boom. So now I'm generating a random code. And so that gives us the second piece of this tutorial to make this app. So we have page navigation. We have our random number that we're going to be using to store the data. And so now let's jump into saving the text that the user enters with the code that we just generated through cloud variables. And this is going to be back on the send item screen. So this is before we show them the code. Before we actually show them the code, we want to save that value. And we're going to be using a different type of variable. We're going to be using a cloud variable. If you're not familiar with cloud variables, basically in Thunkable we have 3 types of variables. We have app, stored, and cloud. App, the value only exists while the app is open. Stored, the value persists while the app stays on the phone's device. And then cloud, well, the value will stay in the cloud until you remove it, basically. And the cloud is used to transfer that data between devices. So that's why we're using a cloud variable for this, because we want to transfer this data between devices or across devices. We're actually not going to do what you might think, where we initialize a new cloud variable. We're actually not going to do this. We're going to be creating one a different way. When we come to variables, we're going to come all the way down here, and we're just going to use this set block, and we're going to say set cloud, and the name we're going to use is actually this code right here. So the key to the value we're going to return is the code that we generated. And then the value that we're going to save is what the user entered on the screen. So I can come to, let's see, save inputs. This is what the user entered, and I'll get the text from that input. And I'm saving this in the cloud to the key that we have stored. Unfortunately, there's really no good way to show this to you right now, because there's no way to see this value once it's stored. I'm not going to say no way. There is a way, and I'm going to show you in a few videos how you can connect this cloud variable up to Firebase so that you can see kind of the back end as things are being saved. But by default, this is getting saved in Thunkable's default Firebase database for this app, and you actually don't have access to this. The only way really to test to see if this is working is to pull it back in on the fourth part of kind of the basic code for this app, which is retrieving the data from that cloud variable. So let's jump into the last piece for this video. And we're going to do that by jumping over to the receive side. So once someone logs into the app, they press receive, they come in here and they're going to give us the code to grab their text. So what do we want to do? Well, when they click this receive button, that's an event. So we'll say when receive button is clicked, we want to get the code that they entered on the screen. So I've labeled this with receive code input. And we want to get that value from the cloud and show that on the next screen. So again, since we're transferring something between screens, I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call this response. And we're going to set this variable to the response variable. We're going to set this to whatever we can find in the cloud. So I'm going to come down here and grab this little dynamic piece where it lets me change what type of variable and then provide a dynamic name. And we're going to get the code that they entered on the screen. And then whenever they get that, actually I already have this block, we want to navigate to the next screen. All right, and then once we're on the next screen, we want to display whatever was returned from the database. So I'll come to the received item screen, and when this starts, I'll come to my label that I created, and I'm going to plug in there the response that was returned from our database. Let's see if it works, and I hope it does, because it's really hard to debug this stuff. So let's start with something fresh. So I'll come into send, and I'll type in my name is Darren. All right, so I'm going to send that. That should save that to our database. And it looks like I can't do that with my cursor here. So 067833. I'll go back and I'll receive, and I'll type in 067833. Click receive, and then boom, it displays on the next screen, my name is Darren. So that, my friends, is the, basic functionality of how I made this app. It's actually very, very simple once you break it into these kind of 4 pieces and you know what you're doing. So I hope that you now know how to use these cloud variables, how to dynamically populate them, the easy way to generate this random number. And that's really where I'm going to cut it off on this video. And there's really not much more code, but one thing that we really need to add to this app is validation. I'm going to get into that in the next video. So if you want to stick around and watch that one, I'll have that one up for you to click on. And basically we're going to be answering the question. I'm going to be showing you how to throw errors if the user enters in or doesn't enter in anything, or what do we do if they enter a bad code. We want to tell the user, hey, we didn't find anything. So go ahead and check out that video, and if you liked this one, be sure to smash that like button, and I will see you in the next one.